What do you do with pot-bound plants? That's what I'm going to discuss in this video. I'll show you what I do to these before I plant them. I'll also show you a couple of different devices that you can use on this. And I'll explain why you should do something about such plants. So what I have here is an Iris ruthenica, and it's actually one of my seedlings, and it's been in this pot for a couple years. What I do with my seedlings, I start them off, put them in a pot, then I bury that pot in the ground and just leave it there for a couple years until they bulk up. I find once they're a larger size, they're so much easier to deal with in the garden. Now this one has grown really well, and it's time to put it in the garden. But when I took it out of the pot, look what I found. Terrible case of root bound. Now if you see this in a nursery, it's best not to buy a plant like this. But to be honest, I usually do buy it, especially if it's on sale, because you can revive this plant and it will grow just fine. But if you take this plant and just plant it like this in the ground, it won't do nearly so well unless you take care of this problem first. So what is root bound? Well, as the roots grow, they grow out and touch the plastic pot that's around it. They can't go any farther, so what they do is they start going around and around in circles. Many times they'll grow down as well as around to get at that moisture that's lower down. So I have lots of roots going this way, I have lots of roots going this way. When they get to the bottom, they just go around and you get this thick layer of roots right here. Now you can see the roots are nice and white. They're very healthy and there's nothing wrong with these. But if I plant this the way it is, they're going to tend to continue going around here. And I really want these to go into the regular soil as quickly as possible. So we really want to do something with this. There are 3 different approaches to this, and the science has been done on this to show which is best. The worst option is to plant it the way it is. Another option is to cut the bottom 1 inch off, and that works quite well. You can also slice this, 4 vertical slices, and that also works very well. The best way to do this is to slice the sides and the bottom. So what you do is you cut the bottom off, and you basically cut it so you end up with a cube. You're cutting all these surface roots away. And that actually works the best for a long-term growth of these plants. But the more roots you cut off, the more care you have to take after planting. You have to water it well because now most of the roots are gone. I like to take a medium road approach. I make 4 vertical cuts, and I usually tease this bottom apart if I can. Or in this case, there's so many roots, I'll probably cut some of it off. Well, here's a couple tools. This is my traditional tool, and I keep it by my potting bench because I always need to cut something. And it's just a kitchen knife. It has a wooden handle. The blade goes into the handle, so it's fairly strong. It's serrated, which is important because it's better for cutting roots that way. And this works really well. I picked up a bunch of these at the secondhand store for $1 or $2, and they've been in the garden here for 5 years, and I just love this tool. Now the other tool you can use is one of these garden knives. And I've read about these, and a lot of people brag about how great these are, so I went out and got one last year. And the one I purchased is one of the top of the line. It's a Nisaku. It's stainless steel, so it's never going to rust. It's a very thick steel. They're not cheap, but it is a really well-made tool. Now it has 2 edges. One is sharpened like a knife, it's like a blade, and the other side is serrated. And people use these for all kinds of things in the garden. Now I haven't got a lot of use out of this yet, but in the future I am going to do a comparison video between various tools for doing weeding and working in the garden, and this will certainly be one of them. Take your pot, take your tool, and just slice along one side. And we're only going to go in about a ½ inch. You're cutting the surface roots, but you're not cutting deep and you're not damaging the internal roots. Now this is easier if you just put it down on a bench. So now I'm going to try this tool. What I've found is that the side that's sharpened like a knife really doesn't cut very well. And I've tried it on a few things and I'm not sure how useful that is. The serrated end works much better. I normally would tease these out like this, but these bottom ones are so bad. We'll just get rid of them. Now it's ready to be planted. Now I've planted a lot of pot-bound plants and I know that this will do just fine, but I will keep an extra eye on it for the next 2 or 3 weeks and make sure it stays watered. These cut ends on the roots will generate new roots and you'll get lots of fresh roots growing into the new soil. The other thing that's really important for these new plants is to water them correctly, and I find so many gardeners don't know how to water. If you're watering your new plants every day, you're doing it wrong. This plant probably doesn't need to be watered any more than once a week. But the way you know is that you actually test the soil. And I've covered that in a separate video, and I'm going to put a link to that video in the top right-hand corner. If you haven't seen that video, watch it. It will save a lot of your plants. This is a nice looking iris. So far it hasn't flowered, and I thought at this size it would have done that. So hopefully next year I'll actually see what this looks like. But I'll post a picture from the internet just so you know what I'm looking at here. Happy gardening!